Oh, Hibiscus Witch, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you showing up. So good morning to you. Um, all right. We have... Seems dark in here. Oh, I didn't open up the blinds. There we go. Good. Somewhere over here. Right. Just a little bit more light. That's good. Okay. So, our medicine making for today, we're again kind of taking advantage of the season, what's coming up. This is one thing that herbalists kind of get really used to, right? Is and Renee, you know this because you've been out harvesting milky oats. Many times the plants are the boss of us, and they are the ones who are deciding when and where and how we are going to harvest and if we're going to harvest. Part of harvesting milky oats is a lot of times you're going out to check on them. It's like, not today. You walk away empty-handed. So today I wanted to talk about a plant that is really abundant pretty much everywhere. It certainly is abundant in my backyard. So one of the things that I was doing, you're asking what I was doing this weekend when I wasn't with my students, is I was kind of cleaning my garden in the back. And I harvested this morning before coming here a bunch of dandelion. Because right now in the spring is when dandelion is really coming up. Now I know some of you are still kind of covered in snow and cold and not a lot of green stuff is coming up, but soon, very soon, greens will be popping up. And dandelion is circumglobal. It's a plant that grows all over the world. It was introduced into the United States, into North America. It was introduced as a food plant by Europeans coming in and has taken over, as we see. So I love to talk about working with dandelion because it is something that everyone has access to, and it's such good medicine. It's just excellent medicine. So the name of this recipe online was just a liver and kidney tonic, because in dandelion, we have different parts of the plant giving us different medicines, and using the whole plant, we can do a really nice wide spectrum tonic for the eliminative channels, so improving liver function, improving kidney function, whether taken short term for kind of a more vigorous support of detoxification, or just daily as a general support. Before we go into that, though, we want to touch on the issue of proper identification, because dandelion is one of the most misidentified plants around, and so I very, very often see people talking about dandelion, harvesting plants that are not dandelion. So first thing we want to do is we want to look at what dandelion looks like when it's growing, and what the lookalikes look like. Once you know what to look for, it's actually pretty easy to differentiate. So this is some dandelion that I harvested from my garden. Still got some little leaves, funky leaves on it. So, identification of dandelion. Dandelion is an Asteraceae plant, and the Asteraceae really love to make these little yellow flowers. There's hundreds of Asteraceae that make these little yellow flowers. So a lot of people identify those flowers as dandelion, but there are hundreds of plants that make those little yellow flowers. So you do want to look for the flowers if the plant is in flower, but it might not be in flower. You might just want to, you might be identifying by the foliage. But if it is in flower, then what we're going to see is we're going to see a plant that grows in what's called a basal rosette. I'll write that down for you. basil from the base, right? It grows from the base in a rosette formation. So each leaf is coming up out of the crown of the plant. The crown is the place where it comes out of the ground and into the aerial portion. So from the crown of the plant, we have each leaf coming up on its own petiole. The petiole is the end part of the leaf. So each leaf comes up from the ground in a rosette formation. This is actually two of them. So if we break this up, we can sort of see how they're all kind of coming out right from the base. There is not branching. So here's another plant that has the little yellow flowers, right? But here we can see that the leaves are coming off. There's a central stem and the leaves are coming off of the stem, right? This is not dandelion, even though those flowers look just like it. If there is a stem, it is not dandelion. Dandelion does not have a stem for the leaves. They all come out of the ground. There is a stem, actually. I lied about the no, not being stems. There is a stem for the flower. And so if we look at the flower, we see a single stem coming up from that rosette, right? There's one stalk, one flower head. Here's another stalk with another flower head, but what we don't see is two flowers on the same stalk, right? So multiple flower heads on a stalk, it's not dandelion, even though the flowers look like it. Single stalk. And so as long as you get that basil rosette and single stalk, you are going to get dandelion. One other plant, so sometimes if you get a plant very young, it can look like a basil rosette. If we look at it very closely, this isn't, because we can see the stem forming here. It's coming up and then there's leaves coming out of it. This is a mature plant of this one, right? So this is the same plant. Now the leaves, some people think, well, you can tell by the leaves, but these leaves are quite similar because they are related plants. When they get mature, they can start to differentiate, but they still look somewhat similar. Does anyone know what this plant is? That's not it. This one. If I give it to you to touch, do you think you can identify it?
The one on your right hand looks familiar because it looked like they're all over my yard.
They're all over. This is a really common weed.
But I'm not sure exactly.
This is a very, very common weed. And there's one, it's an important weed. It's a helpful weed. Thistle. No. Hi, Abahita. Good morning. It is not sow thistle. Although it looks very much like it because they're very closely related. Sow thistle is also a very close relative of dandelion with the stems, with the flowers, right? So sow thistle, absolutely. This one, the identifying characteristic with this one is if you look at the back of the leaf, so here's the front of the leaf. As you look at the back of the leaf, there's a very stiff row of hairs that goes along the midrib. It is edible, dilettanter. Technically, it is edible. Yes. So this midrib with the very stiff hairs on it is one of the identifying factors for this one. This is wild lettuce. So this is lactica. This is the ancestor of all of the lettuces that we eat for food, is this plant. It's a very, very common weed. Wild lettuce, Abahita, you got it. Yes, wild lettuce. Wild lettuce has therapeutic effects. Sow thistle has therapeutic effects. Many of the Asteraceae that flower have therapeutic effects, and some of them even cross over with dandelion. But it's not dandelion, and there's many effects that do not cross over, and some unwanted effects, like if you had milk thistle, if you had the wild lettuce instead of dandelion, you'd have significantly different effects. Because what is wild lettuce used for? Do you know what it's used for? Abahita, what do you use it for? You were able to identify. It has a very, very specific quality to it, and it's associated with, we're not doing a class on lettuce, but it's a fascinating one. It has to do sedating. Yes, sleep, absolutely. Yes, both of you. 10 points to both of you. Yes, it's strongly sedating. It is a pain reliever. And it has to do with the what's called the lactucarium. That is that white exudate. That is a latex. That is a milky latex right there. If you break the stem, you'll see a white exudate coming out. And that is the strong medicine from there. It's also incredibly bitter. Incredibly bitter. There are reasons why we cultivate plants and select for qualities that we do and don't want. And one of them that we don't want is the taste of wild lettuce. So you don't want to use wild lettuce, you don't want to use sow thistle, you don't want to use any of the other lookalikes of dandelion. But once you've properly identified your dandelion, then you can harvest it. And so dandelion has two primary parts that we use for medicine. Right? We use the leaf and we use the roots. Both of them are beneficial. So the leaf, dandelion leaf, what is the organ affinity for the leaf? Kidneys, yes. So the leaf is a kidney tonic. Dandelion leaf is a very strong diuretic. It supports and nourishes the kidneys. It is going to move fluids through and out of the body, so it's very good for people who tend to have a dampness in their body or who are tending to hold on to water. It is one that needs to be used respectfully for those people who tend to be dry, right? Because it is going to be moving moisture out of your body. And so if you have a tendency towards dryness, you'd want to offset that. But yes, so it's a very strong diuretic and a very good kidney tonic. It's also extremely nourishing. So the roots of dandelion has long taproots that go down. We'll talk about the roots in just a moment. Roots have very long taproots, go down into the soil, and they're able to penetrate deep down into deeper areas of the soil. And when it does that, it's able to grab onto nutrients deeper in the soil and bring them up to the surface. And so whenever you see plants that have these deep taproots, often they're an indicator that the foliage, the plant, is going to be quite nourishing because it is able to tap into nutrients deep in the soil. And so it is with dandelion. So it's able to grab those nutrients from the soil and bring them up and deposit it in the foliage. So dandelion foliage is very, very rich in minerals. It is very high in beta carotene. So very, very, very nourishing, high in vitamin K. So you can make it as a tea or as a vinegar extract, and that would be really wonderful. Now we're gonna make a tincture out of this, all right? And so with a tincture, it is important to remember that what we're going to be getting will be primarily the diuretic effect, the kidney tonifying effect, but what won't be coming out in there? The minerals, yeah, the minerals, because minerals don't like alcohol. So a tincture isn't a great way to get nutrients out of an herb because minerals aren't going to extract in alcohol. They don't want alcohol. They want what? What do minerals want to extract into? Acids, yeah. Acids or water, or acidified water. Or glycerite will be a little bit better than tincture. We can make a glycerite. Should we make a glycerite instead of a tincture? I know y'all are really into glycerites right now. What do you think online? Would you guys rather see a glycerite or a tincture being made? We'll do a glycerite. I've been doing a lot of tinctures with my students. We've been doing a lot of tinctures. We'll do a glycerite. So in a glycerite, we're still going to be getting all of the nutrients. The thing, and yes, from abejitas, okay. The thing about glycerites that we want to remember is that anything that is soluble in water is a good candidate for a glycerite. So as long as you can make a tea from it, yeah, you can make a glycerite. And both of these are wonderful for teas. And because we're using glycerin, we will actually be extracting more of those minerals. So the glycerite will actually represent more accurately the total chemistry of the plant than the tincture would, right? Because we are using hey Marcos, hi, you're not late, you're right on time. No, you are a little bit late. As I talking about, you distracted me. Yeah, it's full spectrum. It's a wider range of constituents. Marcos, we just decided to change from making a tincture of dandelion to making a glycerite of dandelion. So that's what we're talking about right now. So I have gone through already. I was going to make you all do it, but I decided not to. I garbled these already. So garbling is when you're going to go through and pull off. Kind of what I've been doing is I've been sitting here. You're going to go through and assess the quality of the herbs, and take off any that are not up to your standard of quality for your medicine making. So dead leaves are coming out. Check for bugs. There's no bugs. I washed the roots off very, very well, brushed them really well, so they're all nice and clean. The foliage is nice and clean. There's no old foliage. Just going through it for a double check. So when we're making a glycerite then, we're going to, we were talking about the leaf. So the dandelion leaf then, so we are going to be getting a nourishing tonic, and we're going to be getting a kidney tonic. Still a strong diuretic, but a little bit more of those minerals. Not quite as strong a diuretic. Really, if we were looking for it to be therapeutic, a medicinal diuretic, we probably would want to stick with the tincture. But not everything needs to be medicinal, right? And when we're supporting and nourishing the system, we actually don't really need to, not everything needs to be the strongest it can possibly be. We have this mindset, you want to make things strong, 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 strong. It doesn't have to be, especially if we're doing nourishment. Marcos, okay, it's 2:18 p.m. here in Puerto Rico. That's what I need. Good info about glycerites. That's right. That's right. I'm terribly jealous of Marcos because Marcos talks about going down to, like in his town, he can go out on the outskirts of his town and find wild Damiana growing. Yeah, you got to ooh from folks here. Very, very jealous. I am going to go to Puerto Rico and visit you someday, Marcos. All right, so we have our dandelion. So it's been garbled, it's been harvested, washed, garbled, and it's ready to press. Now I do want to point out here, generally the part, I have not been sleeping well, so I keep on jumping around, plus Marcos was late, so he distracted me. We don't really use the flowers for medicine in dandelion. You can. There's a lot of them that milky latex, so they're gonna add a considerably larger amount of bitterness. There's some lutein and some carotenoids in the flower tops, but I don't use them. So I'm gonna toss them away. So we have the leaf for the kidneys. What is the root for then? If the leaf is supportive to kidneys, the root is supportive to the liver. That's right. So the root is one of the primary liver tonics that we use. It is very nourishing and strengthening to the liver. It improves liver detoxification, but it's also improving the function of the liver. So we can take it as a daily tonic just for general strengthening. So here's the wonderful thing about dandelion. It's an abundant weed, and in just this right here, we get deep nutrition, we get kidney support, we get liver support. In just this right here. It's like really good, and digestive support too, right? Digestive support also, because the fructooligosaccharides, the inulin in the root of dandelion is also so important for improving the growth and function of probiotics. It's really good medicine. So y'all should make whole plant dandelion extracts of whatever way you can get them. I made dandelion flower. Abahita, thank you. I was thinking about that after I said that. I've not made that. So Abahita says, I make dandelion flower oil for massaging breasts, said to help with like fibrocystic breasts for moving the lymph in breast tissue. So yes, yeah.
Can you eat the flowers?
Can you eat the flowers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get the carotenoids.
You can eat the flowers. All right, so we have our plants cleaned and ready to go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to weigh them. I'm going to move y'all down here so you can see a little bit more. Also, I totally did not mean to do this, but I wore my dandelion shirt. I have found it to be very handy when I need to do the botanical structures of dandelion, and I don't have a dandelion around. If I have this shirt, I can do it. All right, so we're going to weigh the dandelion and see how much we have. So I'm going to change my units to grams. So we have a total of 148, we're going to call that 150 grams of plant material. Fresh. So we have 150 grams of plant material. Now, when we're making a fresh plant tincture, what are our ratios?
1 to 2.
1 to 2, very nice. 1 to 2, so for every 1 gram of plant material, we're going to use 2 milliliters of our solvent. And our solvent is going to be our glycerin. So we have 150 grams of plant material. That means we're going to need 300 mils of glycerin. And so I'm going to roughly chop our dandelion. And I'm just going to chop up all of the root and leaf. And I didn't measure how much of each we have. It's leaf and root and a couple of little buds in there. Because we're not thinking of a clinical strength tincture here, right? We're just making something that's going to be really, really nourishing and wonderful for our system. So this is all prepped and ready to go. There's our 300 grams. Very cool info about the dandelion flower oil. Did you use that for mastitis also in TCM? We use dandelion for liver and breast heat. So mastitis, etc. Nice. Very cool. All right. Now we're going to get our glycerin. So we have 300 mils of glycerin. Now, one of the things that always blows people's mind is we're going to use this volume of glycerin to extract this volume of plant material. And it doesn't look like it's going to be enough when you first mix them together. So if we put the dandelion, we might have to do this in 2 batches, maybe not. No, we can do it in 1 batch. All right. So we've got our dandelion leaf in here. And we're going to pour our glycerin over. Now, if we were doing a folk method, put the dandelion in a jar and cover it with our solvent, glycerin, or whatever, without weighing and measuring, oftentimes you'll end up with a much larger volume of your solvent, of your menstruum, because it's hard to accurately assess how much to use when there's a lot of fresh plant material and the water inside, or when there's a lot of, in a dry plant material, when there's a lot of air inside, right? Whether you have air or water, you have stuff that's bulking things up and making it difficult to assess properly. So weight, measurement by weight is much more effective. Hi!
Are you in the middle of class?
We are in the middle of class. Hi! Hey!
Circle back around, trying to get the baby to sleep. Then.
Oh, good. I didn't miss y'all. All right, see you in a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn this on. It's going to be loud. Cover your ears. Ooh, it's an unpleasant sound. That is a really unpleasant sound. didn't ignore it, but I acknowledge the unpleasantness of that sound, and I apologize for the unpleasantness of the sound. And so you can see it's getting very viscous and thick. What we're wanting to break up those cell walls so that we can pull the water out of the cells, and that is going to thin this considerably because this is far too viscous as it is. But as we break it all up, we can see it becomes much more thin, and we can see that that was a perfectly adequate amount of glycerin to make this with. All right. So, I mean, kind of, that's it. Let me get a stand here. Making glycerites and tinctures. Put you back up. There you go. It's really easy. Most of that was my talking about it, not actually doing it. Just the doing it really is a matter of minutes. So we've got our extraction done here, the fresh plant and glycerin. Now, what I generally like to do with glycerin is I like to do what's called a sealed simmer, which is putting it into a jar and heating it up for about half an hour. Hot glycerin is a much more effective solvent than room temperature glycerin. So that is going to make a stronger medicine. I've got a little bit of residual glycerin in here. So I'm going to put it into a jar and I am going to simmer for about half an hour with the lid on. And then I will take it out of there and then I will be, let it cool down. And once it cools down, we can strain it and then it's ready to use. At that point, it's ready to use. So unlike making a glycerin using other methods where we're not using heat and letting it sit for a couple of weeks, and unlike making a tincture, there's some chairs or we have pillows. And unlike making a tincture, where generally you're waiting for a month or so, if you're making it via maceration. Digesting it, adding some heat to the mix, that's called digestion, is going to make our medicine ready in the same day, certainly by the next day. So that is really a benefit of the glycerite. One of the reasons why you don't necessarily want to leave a glycerite in the jar by itself is also that if you've ever made a tincture before, you'll know that if you fill your jar with the plant material and the alcohol, what's going to happen is the plant material will fall down to the bottom, and then the alcohol will be on top, and the alcohol exerts a protective influence on the plant material as it's extracting, right? Because the alcohol is covering the surface, and so no pathogens, no funky stuff can get in there because it's sealed off. Well, that doesn't happen with glycerin because with glycerin, the plants are lighter than the solvent, and so the plants are going to float up to the top. So as this separates out, we'll see a layer of glycerin down here and the plants up here, which means you cannot cover the plants and let them sit with a glycerite. It's not going to protect itself because it isn't going to float on there. So doing a sealed simmer, doing it quickly, getting it processed and out of there is also going to minimize any possibility of other things getting in there, growing mold or other things that are going to be growing in there. Yes?
With the sealed simmer, do you get any heat degradation?
So the question is, with the simmering, do you get any heat degradation? Absolutely, if you are using a plant that is sensitive to heat. So that would be one of the concerns that you have. One of the reasons why we seal it which isn't necessarily applicable to this one, is to retain aromatic compounds. So if you were making a glycerite of like orange peel, right, or rose or peppermint or lavender, if you just had that in an open container and you were heating that, those volatile compounds would be leaving. But there are no volatile compounds in here, so we're not concerned about volatile compounds. They're not there. Certainly, the vitamins that are in the leaf will. The vitamin C, the leaf has some vitamin C in it, that will be damaged by heat. We don't really use glycerites for vitamin C anyway, so I'm not so concerned with that. If we were making a tincture, the alcohol would have degraded the vitamin C. So in a tincture, there's no vitamin C at all. In a glycerite, there'll be some vitamin C, but how much is there? Pretty small amounts, and it will degrade if you heat it up, but it's not a great source of it anyway. Beta carotene is enhanced by heat. Absorption is enhanced by heat. You get more beta carotene from plants that are cooked than are raw, just because you're breaking those cell walls. And the minerals are not degraded by heat because minerals are elements. They've been around forever. There's nothing that we can do in our homes that's going to damage any minerals. Same thing with the pigments, with the phenolic compounds. Most everything else is very, very stable in the heat. So it is a question that you want to ask, absolutely. And when we look at dandelion, no, we can do heat. Well, and you would know that also because if something is traditionally made with a hot water extraction and it is effective with that, then you know that neither heat nor drying was affecting it, right? But there are going to be plants that would be very, very delicate, and doing this would alter them. And so we'd want to be cautious with that. Yeah. I love rose glycerite. Is heat sealing a good idea to make it even if you aren't in a hurry? So yes, I love rose glycerite, and it's one of my favorites. Let me pass around some rose glycerite just so y'all, just because we can pass around some rose glycerite. So this is rose in a glycerin extract. If you've never tasted glycerin, this will be a good way for you to taste. Glycerin. There's no alcohol in there. It is glycerin, but it's just glycerin and rose and a little bit of hibiscus in there. And a little bit, this is what I do with my rose glycerite, because I use the dried roses instead of fresh. So I dilute when you're making a dried plant glycerite, you want to dilute the glycerin with some water because it's too viscous. Instead, when you're making your rose glycerite, instead of diluting with water, if you are using dried plant material, you can dilute with rose hydrosol. And by diluting with rose hydrosol, you get all of those aromatics. You're increasing the amount of aromatics because you're using a hydrosol. I also like to put just a pinch of hibiscus in there to bump up those anthocyanins. You get a much more beautiful red color because, as you may have noticed, the rose glycerite doesn't always extract all of those glycerites. Thank you so much for waiting as I finished answering the question. Yes, what were you going to ask?
Wow. Why doesn't it work with that? Why doesn't it work with that?
It does work with that. We just finished using it. It works very well with this. These are dandelions that we just made into medicine. You know what dandelions are? No? I'll show you a dandelion when we leave here because we have some going outside.
Actually, I saw one.
Yeah, that's what's in here. We made dandelions into medicine. 4 years ago, you said in a class, you mix 25% of water and glycerin. Yeah, Marcos, yes, exactly. You want to use 25% dilution with the glycerite if you're using dried plants. Yeah. Fresh plants have their own water. They're bringing their own water, so there will be dilution as that water comes out in the plant material. But if you're using dried plants, then you dilute 75% glycerin and 25% water. And if you're making rose hydrosol or any kind of or rose glycerite or any kind of aromatic glycerite, if you have the hydrosol for that, instead of water, you would just use the hydrosol. All right, so that is a dandelion glycerite. So we can take this every day as a general nourishing tonic. We can also take it as a nourishing tonic that is also giving gentle support to our kidneys and our liver. Just day-to-day nourishment, because they are always under attack. They always are kind of stressed, and so giving that support is a much kinder way also of conceptualizing detoxification, because many of you know I really hate the way that detoxification is kind of presented in the larger culture right now, because there is so much body hatred and there's so much body hatred around it. And focus on overstimulation and ultimately depletion of those organs of elimination. If you're constantly hyperstimulating the liver, if you're stimulating the kidneys, that is going to cause inflammation, it's going to cause reactivity, it's going to cause irritation to those. So there are ways to nourish and support those organs so that they can do their job, because you don't have to do detoxification. You don't have to do a detox 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every moment of every day. Your body is detoxifying. You have a liver and kidney and lymphatic system and all of these organs that do a gorgeous job at detoxifying your body. So we want to just give those organs love and support and nourishment, and then let them do their job, unless there is a specific functional or organic problem with them. Yes, Con?
Did you say just now what is utilized to do the detoxing? What generally is? What is it that's pushing the liver to do?
Oh, oftentimes people will do kind of heavy duty detox programs that will put more of a load on the systems. There's a number of different things that people
Can you
use.
give just a quick example of what someone would do to try and make the liver
Yeah.
work harder?
So liver less than kidneys.
Okay.
No, I can give you a liver one. The gallbladder cleanse. The heavy duty gallbladder cleanse, half a cup of lemon juice and olive oil mixed together, and you down it really quickly. It dumps bile really rapidly. Yeah, it's a ludicrous thing to do to your body, but people do it all the time in the name of gallbladder and liver cleanse. It's a perfect example of one. Horrible and ineffective. So give some love to your organs and let them do their job. So that's what we're doing with this system, is we're gonna give our organs some love. So y'all, I've got little jars. So you'll be taking home some of the glycerite yourself, so that you can take your jar and put it into a water bath, into a pan of hot water, bring it to a boil and simmer it in a water bath for half an hour, let it cool down, and then you can strain that through a cloth, and you will have a whole plant dandelion leaf and root glycerite to use for your daily support. And you should go and find some dandelion. Do some identification. You've got dandelion and you've got those lookalikes. You have sow thistle. Abuelita has some sow thistle growing around her, but so do you. You have wild lettuce growing around you. You have a lot of different Asteraceae family plants that are lookalikes for dandelion. So your homework is to go find a dandelion and find a lookalike. Does that mix need to be strained? Right, yes. So we'll simmer it, and then we're gonna strain it out so that we will end with a liquid glycerite that we can take orally. But yes, it will need to be strained. But it can be strained later on today after you do the simmer, because it's available immediately, or you can let it sit until tomorrow or the next day. You don't want to let it sit for too long, because again, the plant material raises up above the glycerin, and so it isn't as stable in long periods of time. Unless what you can do is you can take it and every day turn it the other way around, and it'll all kind of go to the top, and then the next day turn around, it'll go to the top, and that's how you can kind of keep it going day after day after day. But you don't want to leave it exposed. All right, there you go. There's your recipe for the day: dandelion leaf and root glycerite. Let me know if you make one. And if you have any ideas or for recipes that you would like to see, or plants that you would like to see recipes for, let me know in the comments, and I will be happy to look at them. Meanwhile, I will see you next week. Bye-bye.